Hello, friends. I am Jim Elizondo from Real Wealth Ranching, and welcome to your Fat Wallet podcast series. The Total Grazing Academy is opening soon, and here is what you need to know. For the last few weeks, I have been writing and talking about something that I think many ranchers feel even if they do not always say it aloud. The feeling that the ranch still works, but not as naturally as it used to. The feeling that every year seems to require a little more supplement, a little more feed, a little more hay, a little more fertilizer, a little more effort, and a little more worry. The cattle are still there, the grass is still there, the ranch is functioning, but underneath, something feels different. The cows are more restless, the manure is less consistent, the grass recovers more slowly, the ranch feels harder. And perhaps most frustrating of all, many people are doing everything they were taught to do. They are working hard, they are reading, they are attending meetings, they are trying new ideas, yet somehow the ranch still feels like it is not moving ahead. I think that is one of the reasons so many people have connected with these recent blogs. Because deep down, many ranchers know when something is not quite right. We have that ability. We may not know exactly what it is, but we can feel it. And if you have been feeling that too, I want to tell you something. You're not imagining it, and you are not alone. Over the years, I have worked with ranchers in many different places. Mexico, that has all the different environments in the world. Oklahoma, Vermont, Australia also has all the different environments. New Zealand, North and South Island, Europe. Some of them had very different climates, different grasses, different cattle, different goals. Yet I kept noticing the same pattern. Many good ranchers were working incredibly hard inside systems that were not fully working. The farm still functioned, but it required more and more effort every year. And often, the harder they push, the more stuck they felt. Then, something will begin to change. Usually it was not because they bought a new product, it was not because they found a miracle supplement, and it was not because they suddenly became better ranchers. You know, people don't change, right? Okay. Usually, the change began because they started looking at the ranch differently. They stopped asking only, how can I produce more? And they began asking, what is the farm trying to tell me? And that is often when everything begins. Everything begins to improve. Many years ago, I began to notice things that did not fit with what most people were saying, teaching, and discussing. I saw cattle with loose manure on beautiful pasture. I saw ranches and farms with plenty of grass, yet the cows still did not seem satisfied. I saw ranchers needing more supplement every year, even though their land looked green. I saw cows selectively eat only the top of the plant, leaving the rest behind. The stems, the high fiber parts, and then they had scouts. Wow, why? And I kept asking myself, why? The answers I heard from other people did not seem complete. And I have a curious mind, so I kept searching. People said the cattle needed more protein, or more mineral, or better genetics. And you know what they say, when in your toolbox you only have a hammer, you tend to see all problems as nails. I have seen this through my life. When you go to a surgeon, he wants to do surgery. When you go to a naturopath, he wants to try natural ways first. So everyone has a limited toolbox. And sometimes those things help, but often the same problems came back. So I kept watching, I kept comparing, I kept visiting ranches, and I kept looking for patterns. Over time, I began to see something that I think many people had missed. Now, this is important. The ranch is not only affected by where livestock graze, it is also affected by when they graze. I'm going to repeat it, it's that important. The system of the ranch or farm is not only affected by where cattle graze, and for how long, of course, it is also affected by when they graze. By that I mean the timing of the day. You see, the plants have a rhythm. The cattle also have a rhythm and behavior. The rumen has a rhythm. Sunlight has a rhythm. And when those rhythms are working together, the ranch often feels calmer, easier, and is more productive. When they are not, the ranch often feels harder. That simple idea changed the way I looked at ranching. And over time, it became the foundation for what is now called the Total Grazing Academy. I did not create the academy because I wanted another online course. I created it because I wanted to help people see what I had begun to see. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It's that important. One of the things that saddens me is how many good ranchers stay stuck for years because they believe the problem is themselves. They think, maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I need to work harder. Maybe I need more land. If I only had more land. Maybe I need better cattle. If I only had better cattle. And I understand those thoughts. I have had them too. But in my experience, most people are not stuck because they are lazy or incapable. They are stuck because nobody has shown them how to see the ranch differently. Most grazing education still focuses almost entirely on space. How many paddocks? How many days? How much residual? How many moves per day? Those things matter, but they are not the whole story. Because I have seen two ranches use almost exactly the same grazing system and obtain very different results. Why is this? Often the difference is timing. One ranch would move the cattle first thing in the morning. The other waited until the pasture had received several hours of good sunlight. The second ranch often had calmer cattle, more consistent manure, less selective grazing, and better recovery. More uniform grazing is essential. And that may sound like a small thing, but small things accumulate and often changes things, everything. I think many people stay stuck because they are trying harder inside a system that is out of alignment. Like when you align the wheels on your car. When they are out of alignment, they wear unevenly. Your mileage per gallon of gas is not as good. In a pasture system, the cows get restless, so they add more supplement. The grass is slower to regrow, so they add more fertilizer. The ranch feels difficult, so they make more daily moves instead of aligning it like in the car. Sometimes those things help for a while, but often they only make the ranch dependent. from more outside out inputs, more effort, more worry, and after a while, the ranch only works if everything goes exactly right. And my friend, that is not resilience, that is survival. When people hear about the Total Grazing Academy, sometimes they assume it is simply another grazing course. It is not. Yes, we talk about paddocks, stock density, grazing management, genetics, optimal calving season, money, profits, and nutrition when grazing. I am a dairy nutritionist with over 25 years experience. But the deeper purpose of the Academy is to help people understand how the whole system works together. Why the cattle behave differently at different times of the day. Why do they sometimes leave the lower stems and sometimes no? Why is manure different in the morning than in the afternoon? Why do some ranches become calmer and easier over time while others become more difficult? Why does one ranch need more supplement every year while another needs less? Those are the type of questions we explore. Inside the Academy, we talk about what I call the 4 clocks. The sun clock, the plant clock, the rumen clock, and the animal behavior clock. Most ranchers have never been taught to think that way, but once they do, many things begin to make sense. They begin to understand why cattle often do better when they receive fresh pasture after several hours of sunlight. They understand why moving cattle too often can sometimes create more disturbance and interfere with the alignment instead of better grazing. They understand why calm cattle are often a sign of a healthier system. They begin to understand that the goal is not simply to grow more grass. The goal is to create a system that grows more life. That is why the Academy is not only about theory, it is very practical. We look at nature, we look at gut feel, we look at how cattle behave, and we look at nature in depth. We know how long-lived soil carbon, your inherent soil fertility, is built. Most people don't even know that. We look at how much of the plant they eat. We look at how the ranch feels, because the ranch is always talking. The challenge is learning how to listen. And one of the questions people often ask is, if this is helpful, why don't you just leave it open all the time, the Total Grazing Academy? And the answer is simple. Because I want to do this well. I do not want people to simply sign up, watch a few videos, and disappear. I want people to have the chance to really understand the ideas. I give coaching included. I want people to ask questions, to compare what they are seeing on their land, to observe, to experiment, to learn from other ranchers who are trying the same things. And that is why we only open the Academy a few times each year. When we open it, I want people to come in together as a group, to move through the ideas together, to have the time to think, to have time to notice. Because in my experience, that is when the biggest changes happen. Not when somebody rushes, but when they slow down enough to truly observe. I had seen ranchers join the Academy thinking they had a grass problem, and then they realized it was a timing problem, or a rumen problem, or a disturbance problem. We have a series of masterclasses right now called Identify Your Bottleneck, and there are many. And until you fix the bottleneck, nothing else advances. I have seen people tell me, for years I thought I needed more grass. What I really needed was for the cows to enter the paddock at a different time of the day. I have seen people tell me, I thought the answer was more supplement. Instead, the cattle became calmer and needed less supplement. Those are the type of changes that matter to me, because these are not only changes in production, they are changes in the whole feeling of the ranch. The ranch becomes easier, the ranch becomes calmer, the ranch becomes more alive. For the last few weeks, I know some people have been reading these blogs and quietly thinking, this sounds like what I have been seeing. Maybe you have noticed that the cows seem restless in the morning. Maybe you have noticed that the manure changes depending on when the cattle move. Maybe you have noticed that the ranch feels harder than it should. And maybe you have tried many things and still feel stuck. If that is you, I want to encourage you to not ignore that feeling, because often that feeling is the beginning of something important. The ranch is trying to tell you something, and once you begin to listen, things often begin to change. And you do not have to understand everything all at once. You do not have to become an expert overnight. You simply have to begin to observe, to notice, to ask different questions. That is why I created the Total Grazing Academy. Not to give people more pressure, but to help them see differently. To help them understand why the ranch behaves the way it does. And to help them create a ranch or farm that becomes more resilient instead of more dependent. Because I truly believe that most ranchers do not need to work harder. They need a system that works better. And sometimes the first step forward is simply realizing that the ranch is not broken. It's just trying to speak. So, if you have been listening to these ideas and thinking that perhaps it is time to approach grazing and the whole system a little differently, I want to let you know that we are opening soon. The waitlist group will be the first to be able to enroll on June 8th. That is when the early pricing will be available, and that gives you the chance to take a proper look before we open to other people. There is no pressure. I simply want you to know because many people have been asking. And if you have been feeling that perhaps your ranch or farm is asking for something different, then this may be the right time to explore it. I believe that many ranchers are much closer to a breakthrough than they think. Not because they need more effort, but because they need a different way of seeing. A way of seeing that allows the cattle, the plants, the rumen, and the sunlight to begin working together again. And when that happens, something very powerful begins to occur. The ranch no longer feels like such a fight. The cattle settle, the grass recovers, the ranch becomes calmer, the ranch begins to move ahead. If you've been listening and thinking that it might be time to approach grazing a little differently, then it will be worth getting on the waitlist, which is free. We will open access to the first group in the waitlist on June 8th, and that's when the early pricing will be available. That gives you the chance to take a proper look before we open to everyone else. The waitlist can be found at www.rwranching.com/waitlist. May God bless you, your family, your livestock, and your land. See you there.